Okay, so again, we are going to submit just only a presentation slide, not a report anymore. And you have to submit it by the week before a presentation week, which is going to be November 12th. Okay. Yeah. So talking about your project, I think it's a time to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to show you the instruction, right? So there are 5 sections that you have to write it down on your presentation slides. So the first one is going to be introduction and theory. So I'm going to explain that later. And the second part is going to be about your data that you are going to use. The third one is about your econometric model. And the fourth one is any kind of test that you have to do with your model. And the last one is going to be analysis and conclusion. So I saw that actually all of you already have some kind of like topics in your mind. But one thing I would like to say is that you have to be careful when you write it down in your presentation slide. I recommend you to write down your research question. Okay, just to be clear. So what is the research question? So the first part that you have to write down on your presentation slide is the introduction, right? So normally, like, you are going to introduce what you would like to do, what is your topic, right? So sometimes you can have like a figures, like some picture or some data that you can report as well. For example, like if I am interested in unemployment during COVID-19, maybe I can show that, like I can show like the data, the trend of the unemployment before and after during COVID or something like that. So like the audience will know that, okay, right now we have a problem with the unemployment during the situation of COVID, something like that. So you could do that as well. But if you don't have any data to support your idea of your project, maybe you can just write out your statement. For example, like you might say something about unemployment in overall, and then you can just like link your idea into the theory that can support your idea, something like that. So this is just the introduction part. But one thing that I already mentioned is about the research question. For example, like I can tell you that, okay, I am interested in unemployment during COVID-19. That's my topic. My topic is about unemployment during COVID-19. But what is my research question? So I may be interested in like what kind of characteristics of workers that can lead them to be vulnerable workers during COVID-19. For example, like low-income workers may be more likely to be unemployed than high-income workers, for example. So it seems that I am interested in characteristics of workers that can affect their unemployment status. So that's my research question. So please be careful. I know that all of you, like when you type what you are going to do in the Excel spreadsheet, you already typed the title. But please be careful, like when you present your topic, you have to present it clearly what your research question is. Okay. So you may have just only one research question or have more than that. But if you have more than one research questions, you have to think about the data set that you are going to use. You might use the same data set or might use different data set, or you can use the same econometric model to answer both questions, or might have to use different econometric models to answer the question. So you have to think about it. Okay, so I don't mind if you have just only one research question, but if you have more than that, you have to think about the methodology that you are going to use. Okay, and sometimes if you have more than one research question, you don't need econometric models to answer both questions. Sometimes it can be just percentage frequency. For example, like you might be interested in consumer behaviors. So you might report just like, okay, so in your data set, how many observations are female, how many observations are male. You can use percentage to report that. Or how many of them buying instant noodle during COVID, for example, and some of them said no. I'm still using fresh ingredients to cook during COVID, for example, right? So if you have more than one research question, just think about the methodology that you are going to use and the tools that you are going to use to answer your questions. Okay. And another one in the instruction, you can see that we are trying to encourage you to think about theory to support your research question. So theory here can be like, for example, if you would like to study about demand, you might think about demand theory, right? We have to find a relationship between demanded quantity and price of that good. So that's the theory. And another thing that you can do is some topics cannot find a theory behind that, but at least you can just take a look at previous studies, right? And actually, like I already told you that once you are trying to construct your econometric model, you have to think about variables to use, right? And one way that you can know that whether or not you omit some variables out of your model, it's just you have to take a look at previous studies. Right? Just take a look which variables they already used and which one is significant, which one is not significant, and which one you can include that variables into your model. Okay, so there are two ways. First, you can just follow the theory. And please just take a look like, okay, which variables in theory that you can just add it into your model. And another one, if you cannot find any theories that you would like to, that can support your idea, maybe you can just take a look at literature review. Okay, just see like what previous studies already did. Okay, and then the second section is about data, right? So at least you have to tell us where did you obtain that data. Because some of you might use data set that is not related to Thailand. So we would like to know where did you obtain that data set, right? And at least you should tell us that which period you are studying. For example, like some of you might be interested in COVID-19, so it's going to be the data set of this year or maybe like last year. But if you would like to study something else, maybe it's not between these 2 years, it can be like something else. So at least you have to tell us like the period of your study. Okay, do you have any question about that? And then the third section is about your model, right? Your econometric model. So I recommend you to link between the first section that you mentioned about theory and the literature review. So from that part, you can introduce which variables that you add into your model. Okay, so once you construct your econometric model, so when you present to all the instructors or all the audience, you should mention which variables that you are using in your econometric model. I know that you might use some notation in econometric model, but you have to explain which variables that you are using. Okay, and then about the test. So I decided to talk about it because I think like for the second half of this semester, you are studying something about the test of econometric model. So right now you are learning about omitted variables, right? And then in the next 2 weeks, you will study something about multicollinearity, dummy variable, heteroskedasticity. So that's why I think it would be better to talk about your project right now. So you can prepare like, okay, if you already have the data set right now, at least you should know that what you should do with the data set. So right now, I think you can finish the first two sections, right? Because you already have the idea, you already know the topic that you would like to do. You're just trying to find the research question from the topic that you have. And then just take a look at the previous study or related theory that you can explain your research question. So I think like right now you can finish the first two sections. And once you know which variables that you can use, right now is the time to finding the data, just collecting data, right? I am pretty sure that most of you are going to use secondary data. So do you know what's the difference between secondary and primary data? Do you know that? So we have secondary, right? And we also have primary data. So for primary data, you have to collect it by yourself. It means that you might use questionnaire to collect data. But for the secondary data, it means that you are going to use the data that someone already collected it. So I guess most of you are going to use secondary data. But if some of you would like to collect data by yourself, you can just ask me like about the questionnaire that you are going to collect. Okay, I don't mind answering those questions. Okay, so after you know which variables that you are going to use, just take a look at the data. Just try to collect data of each variables that you are going to use. Okay. And then, for example, like right now, you are learning about omitted variable. So for next week, maybe you can just do some tests on your data set about the omitted variable. So basically, you are going to work on your project every week. So in the next 2 weeks, you are going to learn about the multicollinearity. So after you finish it, you can test your model about the multicollinearity. Okay, so now I recommend you to finish the first two sections first, and then every week you can just work on your project. Depends on the topic that you learned in the lecture. Okay, so for the test, actually it's not different from the assumptions that you already learned in the first half of the lecture. So we are trying to find like, oh, whether or not your model has an issue of the multicollinearity, omitted variable, and heteroskedasticity. And if you know that your econometric models has these issues, how to fix it, how to solve it. Okay, and then the last one is about the analysis and conclusion, right? I am sorry for my neighbor's rooster, if you can hear that. Oh. Okay. So analysis and conclusion here is about your model, right? So at least once you have a model, you have to interpret your model. So I'm not pretty sure, like maybe some of you would like to take natural log into your model. So you have to explain why you have to take log. And if you don't take it, what's the difference between these two models? Maybe you can compare it and just try to find the best model that you can do it. Make sense? Okay. So after this week, I'm trying to spend like 10 to 15 minutes of each session, just in case maybe some of you would like to ask me about the project, okay? So I recommend you to work on it every week. So otherwise you have to work very hard before the presentation week. Do you have any question about it? Okay, so if you don't have any questions, so actually this is the first week after your exam. Oh, one thing I have to tell you. I know that next week you don't have a lecture, right? Am I correct? You don't have a lecture class, right? From your course syllabus. But unfortunately, because the lab session is already a week lag from your lecture, so we still need to have a lab session next week, okay? So don't forget it. We still have a lab session next week. Do you still have any classes next week besides this econometrics? Will you have any classes next week? Are you still with me? Ta-da! Will you have any classes? I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. I feel a little bit guilty that I have to teach next week, but yeah, since if we don't have a lab session next week, it means that I have to make up later, which I think you will not be happy about it. So I think it would be better to just have a class next week, okay? Yep. And I told you that because this week is going to be just the first week after your exam. So it's going to be just a relaxing class. So basically, I'm going to just review what we have learned for the first half of this semester. So I will let you do some assignment in class again. And after you turn it in, I'm going to just answer all those questions and show you how to use some more commands and e-views, okay? So just go to your Google Classroom and download the dataset that I already posted on assignment 7. I posted 2 datasets. One is the Excel file and another one is the text file. So for anyone who cannot like import Excel file into eViews, okay, just pick which one you wanna use.
Professor, may I ask something?
Oh, sure.
Is about the theory and the literature? Um, is like we're still confused between whether like do we use all of the all of the variables in the theory, or is it like we use the theory and then we will have to add more variables that we think it should be in?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, So basically, I recommend you to do both. So it means that you just have to review some theories related to your topic, and then you can just take a look at some previous studies as well, whether or not they might add some more variables related to that topic. And again, if you think that it is not necessary to add this variable, you can just do some tests. Like for example, like you already learned the irrelevant variable for this week, right? Maybe you can just like, okay, we already do some literature review and we found that this paper used this variable. But then when we do a test of this variable, we found like, okay, this one is the irrelevant variable. So it's not necessary to add into our model. Maybe you can just do something like that. I mean, like, so normally we always do literature review. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
You
Just
still
like
feel like not sure.
because like we haven't really like touched on with the research yet, so like this is like for us to choose the topic also, because like we're just afraid that after we choose the topic, right, and then suddenly the theory or like something could not apply, or like there might be something wrong before we choose it. That's why.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I understand your point. So I recommend you that. Oh, this is the process of doing research. Okay. So once you are, like once you decided that okay, you are interested in this topic. So I recommend you to find a research question. For example, like I already told you that I am interested in unemployment situation in Thailand during COVID, right? But my research question is that the which characteristics of workers that affect their employment status. So that's my research question. So after you have research question, I recommend you to just take a look at previous studies. Just trying to Google and let's see whether or not they have this kind of research out there. So that would be easier because normally after you find the academics paper or any report related to your topic, so they will write it down already, which theory they applied or which variables that they used. So you can just follow them.
So is it okay if like what if our all of our independent variables will be exactly the same as the literature or like
For
the
this
research?
for this class, yes, for this class, because it's going to be isn't it your first research project, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so it's fine for now for this class. But in your next year, I guess you have to study research methodology. So it means that you have to do your own research again. So in that case, for next year, you have to do something else different from previous studies. But for this class, it's fine to just follow the previous study, just use the same dependent and dependent variables. Make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that is your first research project, so it's kind of a little bit hard. So that's why if you have any question, please feel free to ask me after the class. Okay, I'm trying, as I told you, I'm trying to spare like 10 to 15 minutes after each class. Okay, is there any question related to your research project? It might be a little bit hard for now, but after you start working on it, I think it will be fine. Okay. So I saw that all of you already have a topic, just trying to find the research question. So I do not recommend you to just, okay, I already have a topic and then I just take a look at previous studies. It's going to be hard to find a research question that you are interested in. Okay. Let's think about your research question first and then Google some previous studies and see what they already have done. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so if you don't have any question, we're gonna go back to our lab session. So basically today, as I told you, we are going to review all the commands that you have to use for your own project. Since the first half of the semester, we focus more on simple linear regression. So I would like to show you that if you have to use the multiple linear regression, this is going to be different from what we have learned for simple linear regression. Okay, so I think you already see my screen right now. So after you download the dataset from Google Classroom, just follow what you are seeing on the screen right now. So I would like you to estimate some equations and then answer some questions. You can use eViews or you can use Excel. It doesn't matter, okay? Just pick one program that you are feel comfortable with it. So if my question or my instructions are not clear, just let me know, okay? So right now is 4 or 5. How about 20 minutes for this slide? Actually, I have 2 slides, so it's going to be 20 minutes each slide, I guess. And please be careful because you will have different variables in each estimation. Be careful with that.
Professor, may I ask if you can extend the time a bit?
Oh, it's okay. I mean, like if you cannot finish it, I'm going to answer it anyway.
Alright.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, you don't have to finish it. Just do as much as you can.
Teacher, do we need to submit this?
Yes, sure. After the class, because I'm going to have another slide for you.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yep. Once we finish this slide, I'm going to answer the question first, and then I'm going to move to another slide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's already 20 minutes. Let's see. Are you done with everything? So 20 minutes is too less for you to finish it?
I'm not done, teacher.
That's okay. Maybe you can just take a look what I am doing, and then you can just kind of like working on it with me and just turn it in after the class, okay? Ah, okay, so this is the data set that you are using right now. My God. So the first question, I would like you to estimate two equations, right? So the first equation, you are going to regress salary on sales, and the second equation, I asked you to regress salary on sales and CEO tenure. Okay. So the first equation is going to be just salary and sale, and again, you can just click on it, right? These two variables, and then do right click, go to as equation. So, and again, just check it. You are going to request salary on sales. If it's correct, just click OK. So this is going to be your first result, right? Did you get the same as mine? Okay, so actually, because I'm going to show you both results together in this window, so I recommend you another feature of the e-views. So normally I ask you to just copy and paste into any other programs that you are going to write your result down, right? But actually, like if you don't want to do that, you can just like create another window, just save this result on this window as well. Because if I will show you that if you would like to run another regression, eViews will not let you do that if you still open this window, right? That we ask you to delete this window or close this window first. But if you would like to keep it, how can you do that? You can just take a look at the window of the result that you have. They also have the tab menu on the top, the freeze one. Just use the freeze. Just click on it. They will create another window for you, which is exactly the same result. Okay, so once you get this window, you can just close the original one, and then you can run another regression. So this is going to be your first result, and then I'm going to delete the original one, and I'm going to run another regression, the second one. The second one, I would like you to request salary, on sale, and CEO tenure. And again, do right click, open as equation, and then click OK. So now you can see like both windows together, right? Again, I'm going to do freeze because eViews will not let you do two regressions together. It means that if you would like to keep one result, you have to generate another window first and then close the original one. So you can run another regression. Okay, so I asked you to interpret, right? Interpret the results from both estimations. How to interpret the first one. So this is the first estimation, right? You have sales, you have the coefficient of sales. I just typed the unit of each variables here. So the unit of salary is US dollar. the same as sales. It's also US dollar. It means that if sales increase by $1, it's going to increase salary of this individual by $0.03. And this one is significant, right? That's why we interpret it. Again, an increase in a dollar, US dollar of sales is going to increase the salary by $0.03. This is how you interpret it.
Teacher, can I see the unit again? I didn't.
Oh, sure. I'm going to write it out here. So the unit of the salary and sale is the same, is the USD. And the unit of the CEO tenure is years. Okay. So this is the estimation, right? So the first one, you will see that your salary half year is equal to oh my goodness. Okay, so this is the result of your estimation, right? So the way you interpret your coefficient here is that oh, right? This is your interpretation of the first estimation. And then the second estimation, you request salary on both sales and CEO tenure. So you will get right? This is what you get. And how to interpret it. So both coefficients here. So this is exactly the same as previous question, right? So it means that an increase in $1 of sales is going to increase salary by 0.03 US dollar. So how about the CEO tenure here? CEO tenure here is an increase in 1 year of CEO tenure is going to increase salary by about $14. This is right. Make sense? right? So actually the way you interpret the results are the same. So the first estimation, you have only one independent variable. So basically it's just a simple linear regression. And the second estimation is the multiple linear regression, right? Because you have more than one independent variables. But you can see that we interpret the results in the same way. Your coefficients here are the marginal effects, right? But one thing you have to be careful is that there is one sentence that normally economists would like to use it. Other things hold constant. So for example, if you are trying to interpret CEO tenure, the coefficient of the CEO tenure, so it means that once you interpret this sentence, this coefficient, it means that other things in your model keep constant. Just you will let just only CEO tenure that changed one unit to see how it start going to affect salary. But other variables must be constant, must hold constant. The same as when you interpret sales. So an increase in $1 of sales will increase salary by 1 or 3 US dollar. Keep other things constant. It means that you just let only sales variable change and let other variables in your model keep constant. Okay. You already learned that this is what we call partial out, right? Because you would like to see just only one variable at a time. You just let only one variable change at a time. So if you are considering CEO tenure, you just let them change just only one variable and keep other things, keep other variables in your models constant. Is it clear? Do you have any question? Okay. Great. So this is our first question. And the second question I asked you, should we add CEO tenure variable in the model and why? Do you think should we add it? What is your answer? Should we add it?
I think we should, because it's relevant to the salary of the CEO, how long he worked there. So if we omit it, we'll get the omitted variable bias, I think.
Great, exactly. You're right. So we are going to talk about omitted variable next week, okay? But yeah, your answer is right. Yes, we should add CEO tenure because it's relevant variable, and if you omit it, you are going to face omitted variables in your model. Okay, and so that's the first part of the question. And the second one, I asked you to generate two new variables. So the first one is the salary and the second one is the sale. So basically, I would like you to divide both variables with 1,000, right? So I'm going to just review how to do it again. So first, you can just type the command here, right? So I asked you, I already showed you in the PowerPoint that you can just type series. I'm sorry, it's going to be a little bit small on my screen, but I cannot just like zoom it in. So you just type series and then followed by the name of the variables that you would like to generate. So in this case, I asked you to generate salary 2, or you can just type it whatever you want, which is equal to the salary and divided by 1,000, right? So once you finish it, just press enter. So you will get another variable here. So if I open them together, so you can see that the first variable that you have is salary, right? And then when you divide it by 1,000, you will get salary 2. And then I asked you to do the same with sale. So I'm going to generate sale 2 with divided by 1,000. So I will get another variable here. But if some of you cannot type this command, I have another way for you to generate this variable. You can just go to object, if you remember that, and then go to generate series. And then just type what you would like to transform your variable. For example, like in this case, I would like to generate sales 2, right, which is equal to the sale and divided by 1,000. So if you use this way to generate your new variable, you don't have to type series, okay? Because actually they already told you that you would like to generate series here. Okay, so it's different. So if you type the command in the white blank here, in the command box, you have to tell eViews that you would like to generate series. But if you go to generate series menu on the window, you can just type what you would like to do for your new variable. Okay, and another way you can just create your new variable here is just go to new object and then go to series, if you remember that, and name for the object, right? So for example, I'm going to just let it here, United. So there we have another spreadsheet like this. So if you cannot type any commands on eViews, you can just do that in Excel and try to copy and paste your values of this variable from Excel to eViews. It's a little complicated, but it's another way to construct your new variable. Okay, so I'm done with generating new variables. So I'm going to just estimate the equation. So the third one, I would like to estimate salary 2 and sale 2 with the CEO tenure, right? And then I'm going to freeze it. Up. And the fourth one, I would like you to request salary 2 on sale 1 and CEO tenure. So here we are. These are the results. Can you see any difference between these two results? I asked you to interpret it, right? So I'm sorry. I asked you to interpret it. So basically, we used the original unit of each variable. So the way to interpret it is going to be the same as previous question. For example, like if sales increase by $1, how is that going to increase salary? So we are going to use the original unit of each variable, right? But the interesting question is that what the differences between the results from equation 2, 3, and 4. So for the number 2, equation 2, I asked you to just use salary 1, sale 1, and CEO tenure. For the third one, we are going to change the measurement, if you remember that. We already changed the measurement of salary and sales. And for the fourth one, I asked you to change the measurement of only salary. And I asked you the differences between these three equations, right? This is the equation number 3. This is the equation number, 4, 3, and number 2. What is the number 2? Salary and sale. Let me phrase it. Okay, so this is going to be the results from equation 2, 3, and 4 respectively. You can just see that actually like the number is almost exactly the same, but the difference is that like for the CEO tenure, so it's about like 13 to 14, something like that, right? But after you change the measurements of some variables in your estimation, it changed from the digits to decimal because you already divided by 1,000. Right? So for the equation number 3, because we divide salary and sale by 1,000, so that's why the coefficient of sales are still the same. It's still about like 0.037, something like that. Because you divide both left-hand side variable and right-hand side variable with the same value. So that's why the coefficient is unchanged. But the things that changed is the coefficient of the CEO tenure. Right? And for the last one, since you used the salary that already divided by 1,000, so the coefficient of both variables are changed from the equation number 2. Right? Since the first one from equation number 2, sales are about like 0.037. Once you divide salary, your left-hand side variable by 1,000, the coefficients also divided by 1,000 as well. So this is the way you change your measurement. Do you have any question about it? So basically, I would like to show you that the things that you already learned in simple regression, it still can apply to multiple regression. We already learned about measurement in simple linear regression. You can still use that for multiple regression. Make sense? Do you have any question about it? Okay, so this is the first part. I answer all of the question for the first slide. And then I have another slide for all of you to practice. So for this one, I would like you to take natural log into some variables. And then I asked you to estimate some equations again and answer the question. So since it's about 4:50, so I will give you 20 minutes again to finish this slide. And then if you're done for this slide, you can just turn it in on Google Classroom, okay?
อาจารย์ครับ
คะ
if some model cannot be defined just right cannot define right
Wait,
Okay.
what do you mean by that?
Because when I take a log in the CO10
Mm-hmm.
here
Mm-hmm.
and then it has for the last one the CO10 is 0 and then log 0 it look like that cannot find. I'm not sure.
Cannot find, or you have some missing values. Which one?
Yeah, maybe the last one of the CO10. I'm not sure my number is gone or something.
Yeah, you're gonna have missing values. You're right. But you can still do regression, right? I mean, like after you take logs, some value will be missing, but you can still do some regression in that. Okay, it's already 20 minutes. Are you done with it? This one is pretty short, right? I guess to all of you are done on time. You done? Okay, so let's see how to answer for the last two questions. So for this one, I'm asking you to transform your variable, right, into natural log form. We are going to type the same command actually. So we would like to generate series variable. So I asked you to take natural log, which is default as a log in eViews program. So this is the command. Just type series and then followed by the name of the new variables. Use equal sign and then type log and then the name of variable that you would like to use as the original one to transform the data. So in this case, it's going to be salary, right? So after you're done, just press enter. And I'm going to do with sales. And also I'm going to do with the CEO tenure. I think like your friend already gave you a clue because he already asked me like, once you're trying to generate the log form of CEO tenure, it was already gives you a warning that there are some missing data for this variable. I just ignore it for this time. And then I'm going to run the fifth equation, run regression of the fifth equation first. So I would like you to run lon salary on lon sale and CEO. So it's going to be this one, sale and CEO. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to freeze it and close this one. Okay, this is going to be the result for your fifth equation. And how to interpret it? Oh, you said like when CO equal to 0, my boundary cannot define. Oh, that's weird.
I use
Oh.
Excel ครับอาจารย์
I'm sorry?
I use Excel.
Oh, you use Excel. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
and
why. Okay. Yeah, I will show you how to I mean, like that's another disadvantage of Excel. If you guys remember that, the first one is if you would like to run multiple regression, right? Your independent variable have to be put to next like each other. So the column should be next to each other. So that's how you can use Excel to run multiple regression. And another disadvantage of using Excel is that if you have missing data in your data set, Excel will not run regression for you. So one thing you can do is that you have to delete all observations that you have missing data in there and then trying to run regression. Anyway, if you use different programs, for example, like in eViews, eViews will run regression for you, but I will point you something how to see the difference between the original variable, just the CO tenure, and once you transform this variable into log form, okay? But let me talk about how to interpret the equation first. Okay, for the equation number 5, I asked you to do lon salary on long sale and CEO tenure, right? And your result is 4.85 plus 2 long sale plus okay. So you have to be careful once you take natural log into your variable, right? Because once you take it into your variable will not have unit anymore. For example, like previous one, the unit of salary is USD, US dollar, right? So after you take natural log in there, salary will no longer have unit. And from this equation, you can notice that if you would like to take natural log into your model, you don't have to take it for every variable. You can just take it for some variable that you would like to transform it into your natural log form. For example, like in this case, you just take salary and sales and just keep CEO tenure as the original form. Okay, and how to interpret it for the natural log sale, one sale. I will say it in short for one sale. So now you can see that your dependent variable is in long form and your independent variable is also in long form. It means that you can interpret it as elasticity, right? It means that an increase in 1% of sale will increase salary by 0.22%. This is the interpretation of the coefficient in front of long sales. And how about CEO tenure? It's the same. So 1 year increase in CEO tenure will increase. What should I do? What should I do with the coefficient? So in this case, your dependent variable is in log form, it's in long form. But your independent variable is just in the original form. So what should I do with the coefficient here?
Time 100.
Yep, so you just multiplied it with the 100, right? So it means that a year increase in CEO tenure will increase salary by 1%. Right? So for the sale and salary is going to be in it's going to be like a long interpretation, right? For this one, it's going to be long level interpretation. Make sense? Do you have any question about it? Okay, and for the last one, I asked you to request all variables in log form, right? So it's going to be long salary, long sale, and long CEO. Can you see the difference between these two results? So the first result, CEO is in the original form, right? I did not do anything with it. So you can see that the sample here is 177 observations, right? And then when you just take a look at the second result, you can see that it will already adjust the observation for you. So they said that included observation is just only 172 observations after adjustment. Why this happened? Because I'm going to open it together. So the second column is the original form of CEO tenure, and the first column is the CEO tenure in natural log form. So your friends already told you that there are some missing data in there. You can see that when you take natural log into zero values, you cannot find the log form of it. So that's why reviews or any programs will create missing data for you. And because you have missing data, so that's why when you run regression, reviews will not count that observation for you. The same as Excel, but the bad things of Excel is that because they will not run regression for you, you have to delete some of the observations out to run regression. Does it make sense? So now, because you already take natural log into CEO tenure, it means that when you interpret the coefficient of it, you have to interpret it as elasticity as well. It means that a 1% increase in CEO tenure will increase salary by 0.12%, right? And then I asked you whether or not you will add natural log into CEO tenure and why. Do you think should we add it? Can anyone answer my question? Should we add natural log to CEO tenure variable? Should we?
No,
Why?
because when the value, some value cannot define in the log form.
Yeah, you're right. So actually, like we shouldn't transform this variable into natural log form because first you will have some missing data. It means that you cannot run regression for all of the observations that you have. Some observations will be missing from your regression. And the second one is that because actually like the CEO tenure, which is equal to the 0, it means that they have been working for a while, right? But not count. I mean, like the years that they have been working is less than a year. So that's why CEO tenure here is equal to 0. So if you just transform this variable into natural log form, it means that you will not count anyone who just start working as CEO. So some of your observations for OLS is going to be violated because you are not going to have a random sampling anymore because you already just limit your observations, right? Does it make sense? Do you have any question about it? Okay, so if you don't have any question, I will let you finish the assignment and turn it in on Google Classroom, okay? But before I let you go, your friend,
Teacher,
Mhm.
can you explain the CEO zero or something again, please?
Oh, sure. Okay. The answer is that we shouldn't add natural log to CEO tenure variable because you are going to have some missing data. It means that you cannot use all observations that you collected. For example, like at the beginning, if we have 177 observations, once you take a log, a natural log into your CEO tenure variable, your observations will be decreased from 177 to 172. It means that you already limit some of the observations. And because actually like the CEO tenure here, it means that how long this individual have been working as CEO. And CEO tenure is equal to 0 because they start working as this position less than a year. So that's why the CEO tenure is equal to 0. So they are working as CEO, but the working experience is less than a year. So if you just cut this observation out, it means that you are going to have a random sampling anymore because you collect some data from these people. They are working as CEO, but their working experience is less than a year. And you just, okay, we are going to cut them out from our regression. It means that your model, econometric model, is more likely to be biased from not having a random sampling. Is it better? So when you are working on your own project, you have to think, I already told you that if you would like to take natural log into your variable, you have to think about the interpretation, right? For example, like age or like working experience. So normally we just say like, okay, if your age increased by 1 year, how is that going to happen from that? Or your working experience increased by 1 year, how is that going to affect your dependent variable? So we normally don't say that age increased by 1%, right? So that's one thing you have to concerned about it. First, think about the interpretation. And the second one, you have to think about the type of the variable that you have. If that variable that you have includes some zero value, once you take natural log form into it, you will have some missing data. It means that you are going to lose some observations. You have to think about it. Okay, it's easy to interpret as elasticity, but you have to think about the observations, the number of observations, and the interpretation. Okay, and okay, I am going to run out of time. One of your friend asked me to move our next class to a lecture time, but because this class is 2 hours, it means that if you you agree with your friends to move our class to the lecture time, it means that we have to study from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Okay, so I'm going to send you a Google Form link. So please vote if you agree with your friends to move the class. Okay.
Professor,
Mm-hmm.
for like, I mean, I just noticed something for my file. So For 2 weeks now, I've been like writing my ID number wrong on the file name only, but like inside, I think it still should be correct. Is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay. You mean like you just write it down on your answer sheet, right?
Yeah, but the
Oh.
file name that I sent you is different ID number.
It's okay. It's okay. No worry. Okay, I already sent you a Google form into a chat box, so please vote for that if you are agree to move our class, like next week class, to the lecture time. So be careful. It's going to be from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. if you agree to move. Okay. And if you guys can work on your project on this week, maybe next week, if you have any question, you can ask me after class, okay? So at least, as I told you, I recommend you to find a research question first. And if you get a research question, you can just talk to me like, what should you do next after you have a research question? But for now, I recommend you to just find a research question and try to take a look at some previous studies if you have some time to do that. Oh, you can't access Google Form? Okay. Did you use the KU email to access it? Let me check it. How about others? Can you access my Google Form? Okay, if you cannot access it, maybe you can just send to me. Maybe you can just request a permission and I will let you access it. It's a little weird if you use KU email, you should access it. Okay. That's okay.